Welcome back. Our next speaker, LYNN KITEI, MD, is an internationally acclaimed physician and health educator who recently pushed aside her successful medical career to pursue the Phoenix Lights book and the documentary project. She was leading the cutting-edge era of early disease detection and prevention as chief clinical consultant at the world-renowned Arizona Heart Institute's Imaging Prevention Wellness Center in Phoenix, Arizona, until coming forward after 7 years of anonymity as the key witness to the still unexplained sighting throughout Arizona on March the 13th of 1997. Before her medical training, Dr. Lynn appeared in over 30 featured and starring roles in professional musical comedies, including Alice in Wonderland with Sherman Hemsley, Oklahoma starring Gordon McRae, Guys and Dolls starring Betty Grable, and understudied for Barbara Eden in The Sound of Music. She also played the role of Florence, Arizona in the 20th century box office hit Raising Arizona, starring Nicolas Cage, Holly Hunter, Frances McDormand, and John Goodman. Dr. Lynn has been called the woman pioneer of medical communications in TV Guide after creating and producing innovative TV news health reports for NBC in Philadelphia in 1976. Since that time, Dr. Lynn has dedicated over 25 years to global public awareness, wellness, and health education. She's appeared as the resident health expert reporter for NBC affiliates in Philadelphia and Phoenix, and had been featured on the USA Cable Fox TV News and MSNBC. As the producer, writer, and director of the You Make It prevention education video and workbook curriculum series, Dr. Lynn has been recognized with the Telly Bronze Award in 1995, the National Education Film and Video Festival Silver Apple Award in 1994, the New York International Film Festival Finalist Award in 92 and 93, and many others. She's worked under the auspices of the Arizona Community Foundation for almost 20 years to help fund and distribute her revolutionary prevention education programs to schools, churches, youth groups, and libraries throughout Arizona. In '95, Dr. Lynn witnessed and photographed unexplained phenomena just yards away from her home. She's considered the key witness to the still unexplained mass UFO sightings that took place through Arizona on March 13th of '97. After 7 years of investigative work, Dr. Lynn is coming forward for the first time with startling photographic evidence and personal anecdotes relating to the Phoenix Lights event and more. Through her meticulous research, Dr. Lynn has discovered that we are definitely not alone. So please welcome Dr. LYNN KITEI.
Wow, thank you so much. This is such an honor to be with MUFON. You're going to hear in a few minutes that I actually, from the very start of all this topic for me, I was really intimately involved with MUFON. But after that beautiful introduction, it is really ironic, and I have to tell you, and I know that there are many out here that appreciate this, that I'm standing in front of you today and that I'm doing this. Would never have chosen this topic, I have to tell you, and I knew nothing about this topic 10 years ago before my first experience, but it goes way back with community education. Actually, my undergraduate work was in science, secondary science education, and in medical school. I was raising havoc there as well. In my junior year, when we were taking our rotation at St. Chris Hospital for Children in pediatrics, I went up to the head of the department. I said, what happens to children in the neighborhood, and it was a very indigent neighborhood, who aren't being seen by physicians, and the parents that aren't educated? Nothing. And I said, well, if they're not coming to you, why aren't you going out to them? And they said, we never thought about it. and actually got together a physician, a nurse, and myself as a student, which later became a course at Temple University Medical School for some years until it was just too dangerous to go out there. And I have to tell you, it really changed my life. Not only started me on the road to community education, prevention education, reality of different issues to make one's life better, positive, and educate to a bigger world than that person might have had before. But when we went into one of the homes, and that's what really struck me, not only was it boarded up, and it was a very long, thin home, row home, no light, one light bulb, strewn with fly paper all over it. I think they never took it down. Stench of urine, 9 children running all over the house. No furniture, but they had a TV, and it was on the entire time we were there. And as I looked at the TV, the news came on, and I thought, ooh, that's a quick way to get them. How do you educate these people? How do you wake them up to how to take care of themselves, how to prevent disease, how to seek out help when you need it? Well, that gave me the idea to go to NBC, and I did so in my internship with the idea of imparting health tips. Started doing so with Jessica Savage in Philadelphia. It was the news team in the United States. Very fortunate for that, and did everything, literally everything. It was a college education, researching, writing, going out in the field and shooting with a cameraman, going back and editing, and we used to edit on film in those days. This was in the early 70s, mid-70s. At any rate, it really gave me an education to see that there is such a need out there for community education, and syndication grew from that and on, and really struck me as well when I was in practice, when we moved to Phoenix, and I was seeing kids drowning in substance abuse in my practice who were good kids. And I thought, gosh, how did they get into this? They come from good families, and we had two young boys at the time. What's going on in schools to educate these kids to the reality of what they're getting into? And I learned pretty quickly it was peer pressure, but when I went to the schools, they said, we don't have a problem. And I knew that they did. And tried to combine all my hats from my theater days, from my television days, from my education and medical background to produce video and workbook curriculums to get right into the school so that kids could learn the truth from the kids themselves, experts in the field. I have celebrities. And then I found fairly quickly that I needed a whole curriculum so that the teachers could learn and the parents could learn and the kids could do activities in the school. Well, that was an education too. Which brings me to 10 years ago, when this topic literally and figuratively fell into my lap. Again, no interest, no knowledge of this at all, shied away from it, and was too busy doing my thing for the community and bringing up two boys to be caring and productive adults. And here, my husband and I, actually it was my birthday eve, and I go into much more detail. There's so much to the story. I have to share that right now. There is so much to the story and much more to the story than just March 13th, and I hope that everyone out there gets to read the book because I really go into great detail, and it's so much more, and I'll just try to touch on some things today, and certainly the documentary. I can only squeeze 45 minutes of interviews into 80 minutes, but I hope you enjoyed that because certainly that needs to get out there too. There needs to be a visual with it, but at any rate, I'm in the bath, leisurely taking a bath, and my husband, who's on several state and medical boards, not one to be alarmed, suddenly calls me, what the hell is this? And we have one wall of our bedroom that's a window, and we have a panoramic view of the whole city skyline, so we know what planes look like and helicopters and streetlights and so forth, and we enjoy the view. So if anything unusual pops up out there, we get to see it if we happen to be in the room. Anyway, he calls me, and I grab a towel, I run to the window, and literally, less than 100 feet from us, were 3 amber orbs in a triangle formation. One was on top and 2 closely lined underneath, just hovering over a private gated community. We're nestled in the mountains. I mean, there's no way this was military. That's number one. And I always go back to this sighting because I immediately looked underneath to see if anybody was creating this, and it was totally dark. And of course, coming from a video background, I thought, oh, I've got to get my video. Nobody's going to believe this. It was so unusual. And it was downstairs, and I figured, there's no way I'm missing this. Let me take everything in mentally. If anybody's ever done that mental moment. And I took the size and the shape and the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each, whether, depending on how close or far they were. They were absolutely 3 individual orbs. I called them orbs because the lights did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained, and the color within each orb was an amber color, but very different, very soft, uniform color, not like a light with a light bulb that has a hot spot. Very uniform, very different than anything I'd ever seen. And every other light out there, I noticed immediately, was glaring. These did not glare, very mesmerizing, very soothing. And I thought to myself, if I don't get a picture of this, no one's going to believe it. So I ran to the closet to get my 35 millimeter. My husband calls me back and says, get over here quick, one of them is disappearing. And as I run back, we both watched the top orb without budging. Now, I have to tell you that my kids, as a family, we grew up with Star Trek. That was the only, E.T., Close Encounters, and Star Trek were the only things I've ever seen. And the beautiful messages in Star Trek were great to watch as a family. But going through my head was a Klingon cloaking device. Because as the top orb dimmed, I watched it so intently, it didn't waver like the Klingon cloaking device does. It didn't take off. It just slowly, ever slowly dimmed, as if once it disappeared, it was still there. You just had the feeling that it was still there. I immediately got out onto the balcony and shot a picture of the 2 lower orbs and noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. And I was intently looking at these orbs, and as I was looking at the orbs, it actually felt that something was looking back at me. And going through my mind, and it took me a long time, it wasn't until after the mass sighting that I shared this with Jim Delatoso, going through my mind was, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. The next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to disappear, and I quickly shot a picture of that. Well, that was the only picture that turned out at the time. But what a picture it was, because here I caught one half disappeared and one's still there, but I had no idea what it was, who to show it to, and ended up putting it on my mantle, and we made kind of a joke out of it. But I have to tell you, for 2 years, not only did I occasionally look out the window to see if it would come back, but I wondered, what was this advanced technology? Did we have something like this on Earth? I never knew about this technology. What was it doing in a private, gated desert area? Anyway, 2 years passed, and finally, one evening, I'm in the bedroom, and I noticed 3 amber orbs in a line formation far west behind the city, and I'm staring at them, and I'm saying, wait a minute, they're amber, they're in a formation, they're hovering for minutes, strangely similar to 95. And as I watched them, each one seemed to implode from the outside inwards, very slowly from right to left, and they were gone. Didn't really think much more about it until the next night. My husband was at a medical board meeting, and I was at the Arcadia door, the sliding glass door perpendicular to the window, and I noticed the same 3 orbs are now in front of South Mountain. And I knew they were in front of South Mountain because there's red blinking lights on top of South Mountain, because the airport's right in front of South Mountain, and to warn the planes, and it was definitely in front of South Mountain. And I thought, okay, enough. I'm getting my video camera, ran downstairs, grabbed the video camera, and it was fully charged, by the way. Got out to the pool, got about 18 seconds worth. The battery went dead. Went in, hooked up the battery, went out, they were gone. And when my husband came up the drive, about a half hour later, about 8:30, I went out and I said, honey, remember I told you about those 3 amber orbs to the west last night? Well, about half an hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain. And as I was pointing, like this, they reappeared in the same spot. And I thought, oh, geez, I've got to get a picture of this. And I ran upstairs, grabbed my camera. As I got out to shoot the 3, 6 amber orbs popped up above the 3, massive span, over a mile wide. And I started clicking away. And it would happen that I caught 6 pictures in a row of this phenomena head-on, turning into a V shape as the 3 were disappearing. The top formation was doing so. And it was so unnerving because it was so huge, and I hadn't had an explanation for 95. Was this a mothership? Or were we being invaded? I ran in, I called the City Desk newspaper, and I said, you got to get out there quick and get somebody to shoot a picture of this. They were gone. I really didn't sleep too well that night. I have to tell you, it was unnerving. And by the morning, I figured, okay, there's a logical explanation. Other people must have seen this. And I started calling around, called the newspaper, and I said, you know, did anybody call last night to report strange lights in front of South Mountain? The reporter got off. She got right back on. She said, nope, nobody called. And I knew I had called. So, you know, I thought, okay, somebody's got to have seen this. Who can see it? And she said, well, sometimes Luke Air Force Base does experimental maneuvers they don't tell the public about. I figured, great, I'll give them a call. And I get a woman lieutenant on the phone, and from the get-go, she had an attitude. As soon as I told her the story, tried to be professional. My husband and I are both physicians. We live mountainside in Paradise Valley. We saw some strange lights in front of South Mountain last night. Can you tell me what they might have been? And she said, oh, I wouldn't have that information. And I said, well, you know, we saw them. I did get some on videotape. Could you help me out here? I'd like to sleep tonight. And she said, well, I have no information. Do you have a number of UFO organization? Oh, I wouldn't have that information. Okay. Help me here. She said, well, you said it was in front of South Mountain. Maybe somebody at the airport saw it. So I had to call. I had to find out if somebody did see it there. Luckily enough, after I reached the FAA, the woman was really kind, and she said, you know, let me check with the air traffic controllers and see if anybody saw that last night. She checks. She leaves me hanging on the phone forever, it seemed. She gets back on. She says, actually, there's one of them is here this morning that was here last night. I said, oh, please, can you put him on the phone just to confirm that we saw the same thing? Finally, he gets on the phone. Now, this is a really low-key guy, and we've met several times since. And he was more excited than me. He said, did you see the 8 lights that were equidistant from each other, 6 lights that were equidistant from each other, hovering in formation last night at 8:30? I said, yes. He said, actually, there were 3 at 8 o'clock. I said, yes, I saw them too. He said, I can't believe you saw them. They didn't show up on radar, and they showed up at 8:30 again, and we looked on radar. They didn't show up on radar, so we grabbed our binoculars to look. And what we saw were 6 points of light, totally equidistant from each other, that seemed to be attached to something, but we couldn't quite see what it was attached to, slowly moving in tandem, in synchrony, behind South Mountain. So I said, what were they? And there was silence. And finally he said, beats me. And I said, beats you? I said, you're an air traffic controller. You have to know it's in our airspace. You should know it's in our airspace. He said, now you've intrigued me that you saw them at a distance. Let's keep in touch, and I'll let you know if I find out anything. Great. Well, in the meantime, I bring up my videotape. I continue videotaping up to February 1st, and then they stopped. Well, interestingly, after I started my investigation, just as an aside, I found out that on February 19th, 1997, I don't know how many of you know this, St. Petersburg, Russia had almost an identical sighting to ours on March 13th, 1 month later. And several people got videotape that are actually identical to my data. But at any rate, I figured, oh, geez, you know, I'll never find out again what the heck these phenomena are. Just like 2 years before. Lo and behold, they start up March 5th again. And I have to admit, I mean, I felt compelled when they popped up in the sky in these different formations, and they were really amazing, huge balls, amber balls, very unusual, in different formations. Usually, they happened 5 to 10 minutes apart, 3 at a time, in the same area. By the end of the first week, I figured, oh, geez, I mean, I've got to show this to somebody. I've got to talk to somebody. Every night was being taken up with, you know, my husband and I would be in bed and discussing something or whatever, and I'd notice what out of the corner of my eye was, excuse me, and I'd run outside and take a picture of these things. At any rate, I started showing the video, even though it doesn't do it justice, because they're smaller and flicker and they're white in the video. But I started showing the video to my friends, and this is how close I was. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON. So I gave him a call, and I told him, you know, I have a picture from the one picture that turned out at the time from '95, and I've been shooting these amber words, which he hadn't heard about. What should I do? He referred me to a field investigator, a MUFON field investigator. Give him a call. We set up an appointment for the following Wednesday. He calls on Tuesday, and I have learned not to believe in coincidence, I have to say, through all of this adventure that I've been on. But he calls on Tuesday to let me know that the then State Director, Tom Taylor's mom had died that Saturday. Wednesday morning was a funeral. Could we postpone our meeting? And I said, oh, geez, I really want to see somebody. The only window of opportunity I have is Friday morning at 10 o'clock. Can we, for 2-3 weeks, can we possibly meet then? He said, sure. Well, it was another night for me, but on Thursday night, March 13th, 1997, while thousands of people on a gorgeous spring night were outside looking skyward for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, they also witnessed a 1 to 2 mile wide triangle craft. Some people did see a craft. Some people actually saw windows at the craft with beings at the windows. Some people saw these lights that seemed to be attached to something. Some people saw these lights detach and then redock with them, maybe what happened to us in '95, traverse right over their heads, right over their heads. Some people said they could throw a stone at it. 30 miles an hour. Some people did see it take off at a tremendous speed. Totally, totally silent. They were mesmerized. It changed people's lives throughout the state. And we're talking not for just a 2-hour period, which has been reported by the media and others, but we have reports from 5 p.m. until 2 p.m. of these phenomena. It seems like a parade was going through. But anyway, the night of March 13th, and by the way, the pictures that I took in January of the 6 in a row, at the time when I went to the developer, they told me they were blank. And they looked blank. But luckily, I collect sunsets, and the last 2 pictures on that frames on that strip were sunsets, so I kept them. So I was really disappointed that I didn't get any documentation of that. But at about 8 o'clock, 8:20 to be exact, when supposedly this craft was going right over the middle of Phoenix, other people were reporting it in Paulden, which was hours away up north, I saw one lone light in the far west, and I just noted the time. By then, I had had an abundance of things in the cannery. I was going to show the guy the next morning, just noted the time, so that computes. About an hour later, I see one lone light far south, and that was curious to me because not only was it an hour apart, not just 5 or 10 minutes, which it usually was, but it was in a different part of the sky as well. But I noted the time, that was 9:20, and that's when a bulk of people saw these phenomena occurring in Tucson, which is 2 hours south of Phoenix. So that computes. About 10 o'clock, the news is just about to begin. The same formation, the same mile-wide 6 points of light pop up in the same location once again. And my husband, both of us simultaneously says, grab the camera quick. I grab the camera, I get out there, and of course I was excited to get it, couldn't focus the darn thing. Finally get 3 lights, like 3 points of light over the city, like a giant triangle, and I was thrilled, because now I had something to show this guy that was similar to the January sighting. I walk into his home the next morning. The first question he asked me, did you see the big sighting last night? And I said, well, I saw something similar to what I described in January. Oh, no, you don't understand. Hundreds, if not thousands of people saw this mile-wide triangle craft and these lights, and there was something really going on, and NBC is going to be here in a half an hour to interview him. I said, whoa. I used to do news reporting for NBC. They might recognize who I am. I don't know if this is military or a hoax or whatever. Plus, it's not about me, it's about the data. And let me say that again, it's not about me, it's about the data. And I said, you know what, I am happy, share the video with them, please. And if anybody wants to talk to me on the phone, I'm happy to talk to them. And I was inundated the entire day with phone calls and really begging me to go on camera. And I just didn't want any part of it. It wasn't about me. Let the people see what we saw. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, 4:30 news, my video was plastered everywhere, as it would turn out. By 9 o'clock that night, there were a couple of other videos that came forward. And actually, I have to tell you, in my mind, those videos are even much better than mine. When you look at Tom King's, and what I did, by the way, because this is what I do, I kept documentation of every time, as much as I could, of when my video was aired. And it was quite a few times for a number of months, if not years. And actually put together a 15-minute and a 30-minute video. I'm going to share the 15-minute video with you today of how the story unfolded through the media from the day after the mass sighting until 3 years later. I'll get to that in a second, and I'm going to try to make this quick so I can get to the video. At any rate, I was just amazed. I mean, here I have all this documentation of, I don't know what the heck it is. Something huge happens throughout the state. Now, thousands of people had seen what I had been seeing. A week later, I see Jim Delatoso who turns out to be the chief investigator of the Phoenix Lights event, on TV with my video, also with other videos and pictures of these amber orbs from all over the world. I had no idea. That really blew me away. This is happening worldwide? And that night, and again, in the book, I go into great detail of a lot of stuff that happened to me that first month after the mass sighting, but let me share this. That night, I kept tossing and turning and tossing and turning with the pressing thought, take the negatives back, take the negatives back, there's something in the negatives, take the negatives back, take the negatives back, all night long. Till the morning, it was like, okay, I'll take the negatives back. Something made me take the negatives back, those blank negatives from 2 months before. I grabbed those, I grabbed some that were blank, supposedly, from the 95 sighting, went to the developer, I said, please lighten them, darken them, whatever you can do. They're just lights, try to see if you can get something. She comes back with 4 pictures that just blew me away. And I knew that I had to take these to Jim Delatoso. And that was really the start of it. That's when I started to keep an intricate journal of everything, of the media, of the military reaction, of the government reaction, of the witness accounts, of my experiences, which continue, and after the video I'll share a little more with you. But what was really amazing, truly amazing, there was no investigation. There was no explanation from either the government or the military. They were blowing everybody off. Wait a minute. Thousands of people see a mile-wide triangle craft right over their heads, or a formation of incredible phenomena, and what happened in Phoenix? Oh, did that happen on March 13th? It was very discerning to a lot of people. And finally, as you saw in the documentary, Frances Barwood, God bless her, I mean, she was my hero, because she just asked an innocent question and got blasted. When I started seeing what was happening to other people that came forward, that really convinced me that I had to stay anonymous and do my own homework to try to find a logical source and meaning for what I witnessed and photographed. And the more I looked, the more I found from such incredible, incredible scientists. I mean, some of them are here at this conference, Stanton Friedman and certainly Richard Dolan and on and on and on. I mean, there's just so many wonderful, wonderful scientists that have really put their life on the line and been studying this for so much longer. And I'm so impressed with so many MUFON people are so educated. That's what we need, the education. But at any rate, there was no explanation. 5 months after the fact, suddenly I get a call. Now, I checked out with the military, and I put some of my conversations, which were kind of comical, in the book. They were more interested in seeing what I had than giving an explanation for it. And I get a call from the Air National Guard, the head of PR there, and she says, oh, Dr. Lynn, and by the way, they called me Dr. X for 7 years, but she said, Dr. Lynn, how she got my name, I don't know, but she said, oh, I think we know what those lights were back in March. I said, you do? This was 5 months later. She said, would you believe that no one took the time to look at the log for visiting Air National Guard? And the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off flares, so that must be what most people saw. And I said, wait a minute. Now, I hadn't told them what I had. I said, wait a minute. I have pictures that prove that the same formation was at the same location 2 months before the Air National Guard arrived on March 1st. She said, well, you never told me that. I said, besides the fact, how do flares traverse an entire state over hours? She said, hey, listen, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. I'm still waiting. At any rate, still open for a logical explanation. I have always, approached this as a healthy skeptic. And I knew, of course, and when we looked back on finally a year and a half later, by the way, that I had pictures from 95 that proved once again that the same formation was in the same location in those pictures as well. In the background, my husband and I were intently looking at the close orbs. So whoever did this, I had documentation of at least 3 times of the same phenomena in the same location. So if the military did it, do it again, reenact it. Well, they were asked, I can't even tell you. USA Today came on June 18th, and that's actually what prompted them to come forward with the flare theory, actually, because they opened this up to international scrutiny And they asked, once they talked to the witnesses were so heartfelt and it was so real. They said, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? And then the flare theory came out. At any rate, we were still open, and it never happened until 3 years later. On March 7th, 3 years later, finally, we got the announcement that 3 Air National Guards were coming into town. They must have practiced for months, I would think, to show everyone that this was the Phoenix Lights. We were ready for them. We were located north, south, east, and west with our cameras ready, and so was the media. And I have to tell you, they had, on front page of the paper and radio, television, they were going to do this for 2 weeks. They ended up scrapping it after 2 days. It was a laughingstock in Phoenix. Most people don't get to hear this, but it was so different, and I'm going to show you now, because what I did was, I'm going to show you how this story unfolded through the media from the day after the mass sighting until the flare drop. In fact, Stanton Friedman is at the very end in a report, and that was the only time that I came forward a little bit as Dr. Lynn, because I have to tell you, it was disconcerting. There were a lot of people that saw what I saw, and I just wanted people to know the difference and see the difference between the unknowns and the flares, and judge for yourself, and also take a look at Tom King's footage. Those lights are attached to something. It looks like an arrowhead. It's just incredible, incredible footage. The data speaks for itself. And just for those that are purchasing this tape, so they know, this portion is copyrighted, so that cannot be copied at this time. So there'll be a little blip in the recording. But for those here, it's a very special presentation that I'm happy to bring you, and enjoy. I'll be back. Thank you. I have to tell you, that's when not only I continued, I mean, after they sent out the flares, by then, and I had pushed my entire professional life aside. I'm talking from 7 o'clock in the morning till my husband walked in at 7 o'clock at night. I was ravishingly trying to find answers, and ended up, my journal ended up to be, 4 years later, 750 pages. In fact, my son, who was in the documentary last night, God bless him, read the whole 750 pages. He was the only person that did, because I really valued his opinion. And I said, Dan, do you think I should do this? And he turned to me and he said, Mom, he said, it's too important. You have to do this. In fact, everything you have done in your life leading up to this has laid the groundwork for this. You have to do this. And I have to tell you, with his words and really a lot of soul searching, because if I could have done this anonymously, trust me, I would have. I don't need to do this. But for whatever reason, it's just too important, not just to impart the data, because as in the documentary, which I really felt obliged to do as well. I mean, I produced video and workbook curriculums with international acclaim worldwide for schools K on up. And my passion is children, and certainly they need to hear this information. It just needs to be imparted. So many times I thought, let me just stick it in a drawer and I'll show it to my grandchildren years from now, and I'll have a good laugh about it. Well, it just couldn't happen. It couldn't happen in good conscience. And once I started getting things together, not only did I make a commitment, and I talk about that in the book, that I was going to trust in the guidance, because let me share something else with you. As I was interviewing other witnesses, and this took me off on a new road of inquiry, very important road, I found that other witnesses, like myself, had had their childhood near-death experiences reawakened by the Phoenix Lights event. And I thought, whoa, that's curious. Could there be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, be they near-death experience, out-of-body experience, unexplained aerial phenomena, that have a mystical light associated with them? And lo and behold, when I started researching And there is scientific documentation for this. For many years, scientists have been studying this work. There is indeed not only a connection in the event itself, when you look at the similarity, and I go into this in the book, but what really, really hit me was a profound awakening, the positive enlightenment that happens to an individual that truly experiences what I started calling an up, an unexplained phenomena, UP, an up. Not only do we look up in the sky to view unexplained aerial phenomena, but the positive transformation, a connectedness to the universe, to the earth, to each other, that transformed an individual so dramatically to the positive was indeed an up. And the more I looked into it, the more I found that this was substantiated. And I had to write about it and share that as well. And I think that as you really go into this study and you realize that we are not alone and that there are probably many dimensions around us and that we are in a specific time and space right now, my talking to you and sharing with you. There are many other times and spaces, and we don't get to get a glimpse of them unless we're open to them or invited. And the more people learn about it, and you don't have to have an up, and it's pretty cool in Phoenix now. Not only have we made such great inroads, because I was a health reporter. People knew me as Dr. Lynn on NBC. And nobody knew who Dr. X was until I came forward last year with the book. And the media, you're Dr. X, embraced me. It is so incredible in Phoenix. I have such contacts in the media now that when something does happen, and when people do see things, they are open to it. And I hope that that starts to filter out just like a pebble in a pond and starts to really filter out to other areas as well. It is a big start. But also, many people, I get emails all the time from people, oh, I saw an up today, or I had an up today. And it's pretty cool because I think it's a positive thought and a positive word. But again, education. And the reason I did the documentary as well, to go with the book, and I hope that that's whet your appetite to read the book, is because there really is a chunk of history missing from our history books. And certainly young people deserve to have that information in a gentle, professional, credible, soft way that can begin to change, hopefully, the consciousness of people to be more open to accept the possibilities. In fact, in the book I have 10 ways, if you choose, and it is a choice, to connect to these phenomena. But let me go back for a minute, because my near-death experience that I go into in detail, I met beings. Now, I never shared this with anyone until I came out with the book. Now, 50 years ago, when I was 8 years old, I had a near-death experience. I won't get into all that. We don't have time for the whole experience. But I met beings. I met 3 beings in glowing white robes with hoods over their head. I could not see their faces. I tried, but I couldn't see their faces. Hovering above the earth, watching the earth, watching us. And as I looked down on earth as well, I could see people doing their daily thing. A milkman delivering milk at the door in those days, that was 1956. Kids skipping over the chalk hopscotch on the sidewalk. But I knew what was going to come next. And I thought, if I know what's going to come next, then they must know what's going to come next. Why are they watching us? And this is an 8-year-old thinking this. And if they're giving us a stimuli, and they're watching what our reaction is, aren't human beings but an experiment? This is when I was 8 years old. And when I came back, not only did I come away with the realization we may not have control over what comes before us, but if we're awake and open our eyes, and I've whole life has been shaped this way, to what comes before us and take advantage of what comes before us and work hard in a positive way, good things will happen. And we have choices of what we will do with our own precious moments here on earth. And I have to share something else with you. Most people around the world who have had these ups also get a message. And a few of them, such as myself, feel an urgency to share them. And 1 month after the mass sighting, because I have to tell you, from the time I was a child, I have felt that I have had guidance from these beings. And I have trusted it. And whenever I've quieted myself, I've meditated, had a decision to make, and I've had a number of them were major decisions in my life, and just asked for guidance, I got it. And I trusted it. And it took me to a good place. And I made a decision 1 month after the Phoenix Lights. Actually, I have to tell you, 3 weeks after the Phoenix Lights, I went out on the balcony and I looked up to the sky, and it was in the middle of the night, and I just said, because my friends, by the way, because I would ask all my friends, why do I have all this material? I don't know anything about this. What am I supposed to do with it? And a number of them turned to me and said, Lynn, if anyone can do something credible and professional with this, you can. And I went out on the balcony and I looked up at the sky and I said, if I'm truly supposed to do something credible and professional with this, show me the way. Show me the way and give me a sign that this is real. And I'll let you read what happened after I came inside and laid down, which was an extraordinary experience. It proved to me that not only was this real, but that the essence of who we are does go on after we die. And at that point, I made the decision, the conscious decision, that I was going to take this where it's led me and where it will lead me. And I have made that commitment. At any rate, getting back to the message, 3 weeks after the mass sighting, I had an incredible experience. 4 weeks after the mass sighting, hours after a really sweet couple in Rainbow Valley in Buckeye shot daylight footage of these orbs. In the middle of the night, my husband squirms, and like he had a nightmare. I said, honey, are you okay? Are you okay? He said, yes, we were almost hit by a truck. And I said, wait a minute. That's the experience I had just had a week before. I never shared that with him. When I was sucked out of my body after we were hit by the truck and enveloped in a kaleidoscope of white light beams, feeling an incredible feeling of love. And I said, how could he possibly have the same dream? And I immediately turned to him and I said, well, wait a minute, what almost hit us? And he fell asleep, and I laid there with such incredible thoughts in my head. I have to tell you, so foreign to me that I had to get up from the bed, go downstairs, pick up a pen and paper, and just start writing with my eyes closed in the dark, and writing and writing and writing off the paper. I put it down. I went back to bed. In the morning, I picked up what I had written. And when I read those words, the only thought that went through my head was, how did I write this? Why did I write this? What does this mean? And that actually started me on my 8-year journey. And I'd like to share those words with you now. It is an honor to do so. I don't know about other living creatures in the vast universe, but questions keep permeating my mind about the ones who are trying to get our attention now. What if these beings are as advanced spiritually as they are technologically? What if they want to share this beautiful and wondrous future with us? And what if they have already met our spirit world and know firsthand that the essence of who we are is pure. They may only be trying to help us recognize the positive spirit deep within and teach us to know ourselves for who we really are before we destroy our world. Each and every one of us is a powerful being with the strength and wisdom to deeply appreciate our earth and every living creature on it. It is time we view ourselves in a new light. This can begin by searching within ourselves to find goodness and love, so that the consciousness of humankind can elevate spiritually above petty differences, envy, greed, lies, hatred, abuse, violence, and fear. That is our destiny, but only if each one of us chooses to look within our own soul for the answers. They are there. It isn't too late. Humankind can begin this very moment to learn and grow so that our future will benefit from our newfound knowledge, not be pulled down by our self-serving primal ignorance. It is so very important to look within yourself and to believe in yourself. Judge yourself each and every day. There will come a time when you will indeed judge every moment of your own life, the good things, the bad, the kindness, and the wrath that you and you alone have brought to other human beings, to other living things, to our earth. You will feel what it felt like to be on the receiving end. Near-death experiences have told us time and time again that when we die, we go through a life review. God does not judge us, we judge ourselves. So maybe we should judge ourselves now. Think clearly about how we treat others, the energy and dedication we put into our relationships, especially our family, as well as our relationship to other living things we touch in this short but precious existence. So when our time does come, we won't have to endure pain and sadness, but rather we will be drenched in the ecstasy of our own love, in the magnificent light of love. And if each of us truly looks deep within, the positive energies emanating from the goodness each one of us possesses will be shared around the world. Then our beautiful journey to a new reality will have begun. Thank you. Thank you. I will be outside with a few more books if anyone cares for one, and thank you so much for having me. I hope to see you soon again. Thank you.